Right, hello everybody. Once again, it's Seven Sisters. It's the Pubcast with me, Paul, and this time it is Big Al. How you doing, Al?
Doing all right, doing all right.
would just
Better
like-
and better every day.
I would like to point out that since the last episode, your beard has become quite fabulous.
It's working out. I did no drink November and I did
Yeah.
no shave November at the same time.
Yeah,
And it just like it came along so much and everybody was like, "Oh man,
You should keep
oh,
it."
It's like I'm like, I'll keep it till Christmas at least.
Oh, yeah.
That way I can do like the little bit of Santa style, right? And who knows how long it'll last. I'm enjoying it. Everybody else is enjoying it, and it's one of those things like I've shaved completely 4 times since I was 18.
Oh, okay. Oh, really?
Like really, and it's never lasted more than 2 weeks because it's just like I like the way I feel and look with a beard more,
Well, I think you look great.
and that I don't always keep it long, but like
Yeah.
sometimes even just like the eternal 5 o'clock shadow kind of works out. I
Yeah.
mean, my hair's light, so it's like it can actually be so flexible that way. Shave once a week, and it's like.
Well, you're quite the wise man, so I think a beard such as that kind of helps that kind of doubles down on that kind of image, so because you can now you're able to muse. There you go. Look,
The muse.
you can do the musing thing.
What's funny is like that it comes from I think that what's so funny about it is that it comes from like you want to feel it, like how is it looking? Is it in the right position? And it's there, and you just have this like tendency to just touch it.
Yeah.
And like the longer it gets, like the more you wash it and stuff like that, the softer it gets.
Okay.
And it starts out, like a little bit, as it comes out quite prickly, but like by this length, it's like, it's kind of like fur.
Yeah.
Like so.
Well, I can't. I am unable to produce such a voluptuous facial beard. Doesn't grow. Just doesn't happen. If I don't shave for, let's say, I don't know, like for a week, my facial hair resembles that of like a 13-year-old boy.
Shit.
So it's quite. It's got to be clean shaved, otherwise I look like a
interesting.
cunt.
I mean, I've basically been able to grow a beard since I was 18. It's and it's interesting. I think it's partly heritage. I mean, I've got that Norwegian heritage on that side of me.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I was unaware of that.
Yeah, my mother's side of the family did the family tree that traces us back to Ragnar Lothbrok himself. True or false, I don't know, but that's what the family tree says.
Oh, I love that. That's cool. I would love to do that sort of thing. There's a TV show in England. I don't know if I'm sure they've done versions of it elsewhere. It's Who Do You Think You Are? I think it's called. I'm gonna have to.
Who do you think you are?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
Is it
fact.
like it does a DNA test?
I'm gonna have to fact check that. Yeah, so you get celebrities, and they they meet up with historians, etc., and they trace their family back. And some of the episodes have become really like.
Is that
really
like
crazy.
I've seen clips of this where it's like, oh, did you know that your grandfather was a Nazi kind of thing?
Yeah, along those lines. Yeah.
Like I mean, shit. Like it doesn't put anything on you. Like that's all part of the story of life.
The best one I saw was there was a guy. He's a English actor called Danny Dyer, and he's very London. West Ham fan, East London, proper like Cockney wide boy. Every film he's in, or he's always that London kind of gangster kind of Cockney. And his family tree was traced back to Edward III. So he's actually a descendant of a king. It was a wild episode. Like to see someone like him trace his ancestry back then. And then the really cool thing about that was when the historian was like, well, your relative is Edward III, that then means like
We know
every king
For
before that.
1,000 years before that.
Yeah, like every single king before that is related to him.
Yeah, that's
pretty wild.
That's wild. Yeah. That's interesting because, like, I think that while there's DNA tests and the stuff that my cousins did, like, I had read or I actually talked to somebody who was a friend of mine who said, actually, when the Christians came into Norway, they basically burned all the old stuff. So that before 1300, they don't actually know any of the connections. And we don't actually know how, like, real Ragnar Lothbrok was, except that there are legends told about him. and his son Bjorn, and it's like, is that real stuff or not? But then again, today we have all this DNA stuff that's going across, and we can like dig these people up and like check their DNA and be like, oh look, there's a line there. So it's like, I don't know, cool, maybe not, I don't know.
That would be interesting. I just remember thinking there was one guy talking about these sort of ancestors, because I know a few people that have done these sort of things, and they have they break down the percentage of your DNA, and they'll be like, oh yeah, you're 14% this, you're 10% that. And there was a guy, I think, in England once who was real like hardcore Brexit kind of guy, going, England should just be Anglo-Saxon. There should be no one.
Oh yeah.
And then I think someone was writing an article about it, and they were like, yeah, so this guy had traced his ancestry back, and he was, somehow like 100% Anglo-Saxon.
Oh wow!
But for that there's no way that that's happening for anyone else. Like there's a humongous chance. So if they were saying, someone was saying something like, if England, we'll make sure England is 100% Anglo-Saxon, but you will be living here on your own.
By yourself. What's really there was a really cool thing they did. This is even like 10, 15 years ago now. Really at the beginning of DNA testing. And it was this European. Somewhere on YouTube you can find this, right? But there was a European little effort that went and they did this study, and they took like 30 people, basically a classroom-sized group of people, right? And they interviewed them all, and like some of them are like racist and being like, oh, like I don't like Arabs, or like I don't like Asian people, or I think that people belong where they belong, and this, and they did all this, and then they took them and they went, oh, by the way, you who don't like this, you're 15% that.
I love
right?
that.
And then you who don't think these people are trustworthy, you're actually like 10% that, right? And oh, by the way, we also have another thing, is that 2 of you in the room are cousins who didn't know it.
Oh wow!
Right? And that's just like,
That's incredible. Yeah, I would like to do that. For sure, the whole DNA testing thing.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It's also very interesting in terms of crime, because that's something that I'm obsessed with.
Oh yeah,
like that kind of true crime sort of thing. And there's some great stuff about crimes that were committed like 20, 30 years ago, unsolved, and then suddenly
DNA.
Yeah. There's one in particular which is fantastic for anyone watching who's into that sort of true crime. The woman's called Stephanie Lazarus, and she murdered someone in like the late 80s. And there's a great video of her being interrogated in 2009, I think it is, maybe in 2010, where so she's been walking around for the best part of 30 years thinking she's gotten away with it.
Free. Oh yeah, wow.
And so you can imagine like the look on her face when she's brought into this interrogation room, and the detectives say that name. Oh, so what do you think? What do you remember of John Hamm? Well, John Hamm. I don't know why he came into my head. John Williams. I don't know. What do you think about him? So you can imagine her face when that name is spoken to her for the first time in 30 years. She you could see she's like, oh fuck, I am screwed now.
Wow.
Oh, but I love it. I love it. I'm a big fan.
That's so interesting. I mean, crime is one of those things. It's like, to me, such a weird thing, because, there are people who go free for a long time or forever and never get caught.
Yeah.
And then there are people who are even innocent that go to prison. And
did you see that today? I think it was yesterday, actually. There was a guy released from prison. The longest, he served the longest time in prison for an innocent man. 48 years he was in prison for. 48 years.
That's my entire life.
I mean, this is why I love that sort of genre thing. Anyway, I mean, I'm not like the crime stuff. It's the fact that I think it's as I'm getting older, you think about life in a more of a kind of serious way. And thinking, oh God, it is like it's not a very long time.
There's weight that comes with time.
And then once you're gone kind of thing.
And it's really interesting to me, because I find this often, as you said earlier, right? Like a lot of people like come and talk to me and ask for advice and things like this in perspective. And I'm like, and I have a lot of friends like in their 20s and 30s. And, I spend my time, with people and hanging out and just, I think it's like life is so interesting.
Yeah.
And, it's so funny how we look at time and age and things like that. And we really like have this really interesting. We're in a time that's so interesting because, in terms of like really adulting, right? You could almost say that people are born when they're 20.
Yeah.
So you could almost compare age of life, not since like born, not your age, but like since 20.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? So like, there's an argument just a simple argument like that. A 30-year-old is twice as old as a 20-year-old, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Sorry, 25-year-old is what I mean. And so like, and a 40-year-old is 4 times as old as a 25-year-old.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Because they like, in terms of like having real relationships, working a job,
Yeah.
right? These things that, and what's interesting about that is that if you look back in terms of history and how we like voting worked and things like that, you know, there's all this like who should have the right to vote today and blah 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 is going on, and where do our rights come from and things like that. And there's so much in the world that like people are like, oh, I deserve this. I have these rights that are you know inalienable rights, and at the same time. Today we live in a society where some of the strongest social influencers in the world are like 18-year-olds on TikTok.
Yeah, that's wild, yeah.
Right? And they're like literally haven't lived much. Like, you know, they're living the fad, right? So they're living in the moment and they live lifestyles of the moment. They have no like consistency of who they are except for what they create themselves. And sometimes that's a lot and sometimes that's not much. Because there are 20-year-old people who are really mature, but they still don't have a lot of experience.
Oh yeah. No, I was going to say like the whole the crime genre thing is like when I see these documentaries about all these police interrogations and you find these people are being sentenced to life and in America when you've got those states where life without the chance of parole means that is it.
They don't even get a chance.
You're in prison for the rest of your life. And in my head, when I'm watching this, I'm thinking, that fuck, like, that's it for you.
And you know what else? What's crazy is like that what we don't realize is like we see all these movies where there are people in prison and they get their law degree in prison, right? But what we don't realize is there's like while books being banned in the public is very rare to actually be like you can get any book you want, right?
Yeah.
In prison, the list of banned books is enormous. And
really?
law books are some of them.
Oh, really?
There's a lot of prisons.
That's a very good fucking point, actually.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah, that is. That's wild.
Like you should be able to educate yourself, but actually, literally, they prevent people from educating themselves in a lot of ways. Now, there's ways you're allowed to go.
Yeah.
And there's ways you're not allowed to go. But like, do you know, like The Hobbit is a banned book in a lot of prisons.
Oh, really?
Fantasy books are banned because it allows escapism, and it's like fuck, like you know, like like that's what it's about reflecting about life. You know, like how about imagining like you know yourself as a hero, as someone who's honorable and like you know does the right thing, you know, and using that as a reflection of you, but because you know they're worried about people becoming too independent, you know, in prison. It's
surely
like, wow.
if they're in prison for the rest of their life, it doesn't. Surely it makes no difference. I get the idea. I get the idea of banning certain law books because matey in prison who he might kind of brush up a bit on the law that's got him in there, and then might be able to kind of come up with some kind of case.
I mean, especially if you are innocent.
Yeah,
you know? But that's one of those crazy things too, because there's also the other side of that. Whereas, like, imagine, right? You go to prison for murdering someone and you haven't, right?
Oh, God,
and people are treating you like shit, right? And there are people who are literally like, if you don't like fight back with everything you've got, you're gonna be everybody's bitch, right? I mean, and that doesn't necessarily even mean sexually or anything like that. It could be.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched plenty of movies when I was a kid, like scared straight. But like still, like I mean, like there's still an economy. There's still a reality that you have to deal with these people.
Yeah.
And if you like imagine the balance of like I'm in life for I'm in prison for life with no chance of parole.
Yeah.
Like I can murder this guy in prison.
Yeah.
Or he's gonna murder me.
Yeah.
Like what are you gonna do? Like you don't even have.
Well, there's a I can't remember the guy's name, but there's a story of that as well. Like there's the dude who was in prison. I'm pretty sure it was life without parole. So then he killed his cellmate
Yeah.
In order to maybe, I think he was trying to bump his sentence to death row because death row was more of a a cushy kind of living space. Well, not cushy, but he's guaranteed like his own cell and stuff like that. So he's killed someone in prison. I think I'm not defending him. It was a paedophile, so you're like, if you're gonna kill someone like that. But so to kind of make his life a little easier in prison, he's murdered someone in there.
And that's it, right? I mean, how do we even and what's interesting about it is like how do we as people, not having any of those experiences, judge those people as well?
Yeah.
This is one of those interesting things today. I read an article about how there's so many problems in schools today because you've got this case where like when people were violent, right? When somebody beat up somebody else, right? You would suspend them and then expel them, right? If necessary, right?
At school, yeah.
Right. So that suspend is like you can't come to school for a week, right?
Okay.
And then they're like, oh, that person who can't come to school for a week, right, is they're getting behind in their grades, right? And it's like, well, you shouldn't have beat the shit out of somebody,
yeah,
right? Like what the problem is, they started having these cases where they're like, they didn't expel people, they didn't suspend them, they just let them be in school, and then they continue to torture the person that they tortured before, and it's like, you're basically rewarding people for being violent to each other.
Yeah.
And then having like, why are people being so violent? And it's like, well, there's like, we have to have, there's such a reality of we need to have a willingness to individual violence in order to prevent individual violence.
Okay.
Right? I mean, like that's one of those things. Like, there really is thing. Like if there are people who will say anything to anybody, right? But they stop when somebody smacks them, right?
Right.
And one of the things is like, we live in a society where it's like, basically, a lot of people who are don't give a shit, right, are basically held in line by a bunch of other men who are like, I'm gonna fuck you up if you fuck other people up.
Yeah.
Right. And we this is the reality of life. Unless we keep ourselves, we have to police ourselves fundamentally.
Yeah.
In order to have a civilized society. And it's a choice we make. We can either let it go or we can be like, no, I'm not going to let that stand. And I want justice. I want people to be able to be free. And I think that's such an interesting thing because like we live in a society that there's a lot of kind of going back to what I said earlier, like younger people who are like, no, we want like never violence. It's like this is like a horrible subject, but it's like so important as well, right? Israel and Gaza, right? And people I respect a lot said something I don't agree with a lot, which is like, there's no justification for violence, and I'm like, there is, right? We have to be willing to do violence. If we are not, that leaves us free for the people who choose violence to do violence. So we have to have some part of us inside of us that's like, if somebody, it's like here, right? Like we're here and somebody starts swinging, throwing punches around here, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna fucking stop him, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna. I mean, and that doesn't mean that I'm gonna jump on top of somebody and like punch him in the face 50 times.
There's a limit, yeah. But I know what you mean. You've got to kind of fight fire with fire, in a certain sense. Otherwise, you're just gonna get walked all over.
Right.
So for sure. Yeah, and another thing I noticed as well, we've been watching right now at the moment. Yeah, the true crime genre is just there in my head. But we've been watching a TV show called 24 Hours in Police Custody, which was an English TV show. I don't know if it's still on TV now. But you get to see that the police as well. The police, they're like, because in your head you're thinking the police are not that they're not real people, but they are. They're real people.
They are,
and it's funny seeing that when you've got because I guess it's the movies when it's a TV show. When you see a guy being interviewed for murder, it's always like the hard kind of male kind of detective, kind of like in the suit. But in reality, it's not. It's not that. It's just normal kind of everyday people that because a lot of them are just like, oh, I used to work here. I used to work there. Used to be one of them used to be like work on a holiday camp, and decided to change career when he was like in his 40s, and now he's a detective investigating murders and things, and
Wow, yeah.
it's quite impressive when you see that sort of thing. It kind of makes you think, that it's
That's so important, though,
Yeah.
right? And that's like the good and the bad side of that, right? Is like the good side is like they're people, right? And the bad side is like they're people,
Yeah.
right? And that just means that anybody is capable of anything in the right circumstances. We all have our own values. We all have what's important to us, what's meaningful to us, what drives us in life. And, it's so interesting and valuable to actually just think about that.
yeah,
There's actually like there's a really interesting, because I like relationship psychology and things like this. And there's a guy who's doing a new like TikToks and Instagram, things like that. And he what I really like about what he does, he draws a lot of diagrams. So he diagrams out these like how people see each other and why the dating world is the way it is today. And the impact of things like Tinder on our mental state. And one of the things he talks about is a psychological map of like the levels, like how we think, like, at the level 1, kind of like we're in our emotions, right? And we're not thinking at all. We're just existing in our emotions. And then we think about our emotions, and we reflect on them. And then above that, we can we can think about how we will feel, if something happens, and we think about that at like a third level. And then we go, I see someone else is thinking, and I see what someone else is feeling. And then I think about how someone else is going to feel and how they're going to think if this happens, right?
So if we were all operating on that level,
Right,
the world would be
I mean, like,
perfect.
amazing, right?
Yeah.
Right, but that's it. Like, there's also like wait but why is like a amazing long form blog guy.
Okay.
And he writes about this as well, like levels of thinking, and like in terms of like how we perceive the universe, and looks at like a stair steps of like as you go through life and as you learn more wisdom and ideas, and you kind of can go like, you look back at yourself like, wow, when I was 20 years old, I was a fucking idiot, right? Like, but like that's true, and it's not, right? Because like you have all the information you have to deal with, right? And it also like reflects, because like I love to read books. I love to read about psychology and things like that. And there are people who are like, oh, like I hate reading. Like reading doesn't have any value.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sure. I also read like fantasy novels and science fiction because I just enjoy them.
Yeah.
Right. But when you read a book that's somebody else's distilled experience, and you can in a week of like reading 15, 20 pages a day, read a 200-page book that is like, this is the distilled experience, of most important lesson of my life, which is why we like TED Talks, right?
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I spent 20 years doing this, and I'm going to explain it to you in 15 minutes. And it's like, wow, like that's why they're so powerful. But you don't retain it the same either, right? Like if you read a book, you got, there's 100 examples, and you follow all the steps that get you to that end point. And then that's it. There's people like, well, it's not that valuable. And then there's like, oh shit. I mean, like, I've read like 1,000 books, like 2,000 books, maybe. I don't even know today. And, that's where it comes from. Like part of it comes from my own life experience.
Yeah.
Part of it is like me, like mining the life experience of other people and then going like, oh, that's a useful chunk to put in there.
Yeah.
How I think about things and why I should do the things that I do.
I do like the that wait, was it wait, why?
But why?
Wait, but why?
Wait, but why?
That's a good thing to ask yourself throughout the day. Every day throughout the day.
I'll tell you
Hang
something.
on, why am I doing this? Oh, why do I need to buy that? Yeah.
Like, have you ever seen like the calendar of boxes that there's a box like for every week of your life?
Do you know what I have? And it's fucking scary. I remember that. I remember seeing some. You told me.
He's the guy who came up with that.
I've been you that
I
told
think
me
he's
that.
the one who came up with that.
Because I saw that. Yeah, a square for each week of your life, and it is like literally just this. And it's
man,
really freaky.
Like
yeah.
you read that thing.
Well, it was 90. It was someone had drawn out 90 years in weeks for a box for each week. Yeah.
Like he wrote a whole article about this, right? And he makes you think, like, the example, like, I think about this a lot. Like, my mom's in the States, right?
Yeah.
And I saw her in November.
Yeah.
For a week. We spent 9 days there, So I got to see my mom every day for 9 days. But,
Yeah.
but like I go back to the States like once a year for like a week a year. So I get to see my mom like roughly like 9 or 10 days a year.
This is
and it's like, that means like I literally might have 40 more days of life with my mom.
that was something
And that is just like,
yeah. I saw a clip from a podcast about that as well. Like someone saying, how often do you see your parents? Twice a year. Well, you go, let's say they're 70 now.
yeah.
You might only see your parents like 16 more times.
And
Yeah.
well, he goes into like on a level and he goes like, well, think about this. You saw your parents every day until you were like 18.
Yeah.
Right. So the crazy part is by the time you're like 20 years old, you already have probably spent 90% of the time you're going to with your parents.
Fuck.
By the time you're 20 years oldish, right? Like
God.
I don't.
That's a terrible stat.
But it's those things, those extremes,
Yeah.
that make us feel like, oh wow, shit. And like I literally think about this on a weekly basis at least.
Yeah.
And like, at least I love the fact that like my mom's on WhatsApp and like I get like we send pictures and like, oh, I'm making the food,
Yeah.
I'm hanging out with my girlfriend, like, like, oh, like I'm with my friends, we had a dinner party and I try to share that with her and she sends me stuff too, and
That's nice, yeah.
and we at least have that,
Yeah.
My family's not very close and hasn't been forever, but like at least there's a little bit of a connection there. And it's interesting because of like WhatsApp and the choice of this and my mom being on WhatsApp, I actually talked to my mom more, in the time I've been in France
Yeah.
than I did in the 10 years before that.
That's interesting, yeah.
Right? Because I was like, at university and then we moved to Phoenix, Arizona. So I was far away from my mom, long distance, like to my mom for 10 years before I moved to France.
Yeah.
And now it's been 20 years and, just like that level of like, wow, like, it's tough.
It is tough.
But
And
it makes the time we do spend together like really like
there is
beautiful, and I really
that.
appreciate it.
Yeah, no, there is that. But yeah, that is definitely something that goes through my mind as well. I've been here for 8 years, and there's lots of stuff that you miss out on if you're not at home. But then, for example, we're recording this 22nd of December, so I'm flying back to England tomorrow for Christmas. And it's something, and I love having stuff to look forward to in that sort of sense. And also a good point about that is whenever I go home for Christmas, everyone's together and everyone's having a great time.
Yeah,
and I just start thinking, fuck, why am I not living here? Why don't I live here? But then my mum makes a good point. She's like, well, the reason that... it's Christmas, yeah, and everyone's here and having a good time. Christmas. The other 360 days of the year, it's boring as fuck.
Yeah, and it's like even then, like I say I go back and see my mom for like 10 days, right?
Yeah,
and I know like after 6 days, it's kind of like, well, the news is spent, right? The time is spent. We're kind of like searching for stuff to do,
yeah,
right? And even like, oh, you just want to get back to your normal like life. I see like that with my mom, right? My mom just wants to get back and do her thing, and I'm just like, I'm so happy for my mom. Like, my dad passed away a couple of years ago now. I mean, shit, like my dad 2 years ago on Christmas.
Wow.
But like the relationship with my father is like never good. So my mom's a lot more free now, and I'm so happy that she has the opportunity to have like so many friends. But it's also hard because she's older and like her friends are passing away and like,
yeah,
and it's like, it's all these like the emotions are so intense about the entire story. It's like the realization, the importance of life and time and value is just like,
yeah.
It's
crazy. It's wild. And I have to think as well that this is getting deep now. I've been thinking recently, like when you're close to your family, when you've got a close knit family, do you think that's worse when it comes to when everyone starts getting towards the end of their life, people start passing away? Do you think that's more difficult for someone to deal with emotionally? Than say if someone's weren't close to their parents or they didn't know their parents, those people are going to be able to deal with the twilight years of your life. They're going to be able to deal with that a lot better, I think, than someone who's closely knit.
There's two sides to it, right? Because it gets harder when you get older, right? So if you have support structures around you, people to do stuff with,
Yeah.
and, like you're not alone. I mean, remember, like loneliness is the number one killer.
Right.
We die more of loneliness than anything else.
Okay.
Right? Because like this is it. Our bodies are driven by hormones. Our bodies are driven by the chemicals inside of us. And like loneliness and these kind of like negative emotional cycles are things that just like give us cease our willingness and desire to live.
Yeah.
We need dopamine, we need serotonin, we need purpose.
Yeah, I mean, because the amount of times you see an elderly couple that have been together for 50, 60 years, as soon as one of them...
If the wife dies, it's
one of them,
so rare.
Almost immediately.
The husband lasts at all.
Yeah.
Like, if the husband dies, often the woman is left like for a while. And that's not even just a question of age, but women live longer.
Ah, that's interesting.
Right? Like women, like on average, live almost 10 years more than men. I think it depends on culture and society to quite a degree. Like you can go to a super extreme, like Russians, like they have like men in Russian society. Like it's crazy. Like it's so extreme that I think there's like the difference in population is like 55% women, 45% men in Russia.
Oh, really?
And of course the Ukraine war has made that much worse as well.
Yeah.
Like that's just war. Like,
no, it's because
war never changes.
I see, because one of the worst things for me is when I see adverts in the UK on English TV. I don't often see it on French TV. Like charities for the elderly, and there's like a guy on his own, and he's just like that kind of that brings me to my knees when I see an old man in his 70s or 80s. On his own.
It's like, scary.
Fuck. It is scary.
It's really scary.
And this goes back to my point about when people committing crime and just completely fucking their life, completely fucking it. And you're like, well, you've got one child. Because you see so many people in their teenagers or their early 20s and they've murdered someone. You're like, what the fuck have you done?
Wow.
Why the fuck have you done that?
And it's crazy. Like, you have 60 years of hell in front of you.
It's absolutely crazy.
It's I mean, like prisons, it's tough because, I understand that, like, you looking back through history and look at what the kinds of punishment there were in history, and like how we like kind of look at imprisonment as a humane thing, and it's just like it's so like I don't know the answer. It's so like it's such a philosophical thing.
Yeah,
about like, would you rather be dead? Or, spend 60 years in prison. Yeah. Right? And we're driven to survive. It's in our DNA. It's in our actual animal instincts. But there's kind of the other side of that. I mean, people do suicide, like I shouldn't even, it's like.
In prison.
No, sure. But I mean, in life, I was gonna that's like literally what I said was a bad word. It's interesting because I when I do listen to podcasts and things like that, and people say like delete themselves and things like this, like to like avoid that word. Yeah. But it's because I'm a kind of person like I am. It's like if I ever go, like I promise you, I will never suicide. Yeah. Right? Did it again, right? I'll never delete myself, right? Delete. Because I mean, I can imagine. Like being like 80 or 90 and like old and decrepit and being like, okay, I'm done. Like I've had enough and I'm like ready to move on, right? To like finish this life. That was an interesting question. Do you ever have an idea of, ever have a premonition of like how you might die?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Well, actually, do I? No. I don't. What I would think of, what I've thought of in the past is, I'd definitely. What's the question? Like, would you rather just die of natural causes, or be shot? But know that you're going to be shot in the back of the head, but you never know when it's going to happen, because you're just going to be like, but lights out. Or would you want that gradual fucking fading away?
I mean,
this is a really morbid.
It's interesting, made just as an interesting point, right? That gives an interesting reason to be a criminal, right?
Okay, yeah,
right, yeah. Because I can see the argument for like shoot me in the back of the head at an unknown time, right? Because like just like it's over and I don't know, But it's like also interesting is like the opposite of that question is like, would you rather be ignorant or would you rather know the day you're going to die?
Yeah, I think the
Right?
question was different. I think the question was more: would you rather die a really painful, excruciating, drawn-out death at 90 years old, or be shot in the
In
back of the
between
head
now and then at a random
at any
time.
point, and you don't know
Yeah.
it's coming?
Like, I'll tell you right now, I would choose the death, like the shot, because one of the biggest challenges we have in life is to find appreciation in the moment, and that drives the need, right? Like I could die now, right? So like this could be my last day, so I would rather like go out with a bang,
Yeah.
at a high point. So I'm going to work to be at that high point more of the time, rather than to be like, well, you know.
Well, it is that that old kind of what's the word when people say like, you know, live each day as if it's your last kind of thing.
Well, that's
so,
wisdom, right? That's
Yeah.
in its Stoicism, in one of the more beautiful sides of Stoicism,
Yeah.
is that live your life for real, and it's the hardest thing because fear is something that drives us all at one level. It's interesting. I've like read, Robert Greene.
I don't think so.
Like have you ever heard the 48 Laws of Power?
No.
Okay, so like Robert Greene's kind of like I'm a famous author, and he writes these really interesting books that are like the laws of, right. So he's very, very famous for the 48 Laws of Power, which are laws of like business and he write like the laws of seduction, which is about like interpersonal communication. The laws of human nature, which are like the internal brain things that we do. And I mean, that one is like, oh my God, reading that is like self-incrimination. You're like, oh, I do that. Oh, I do that. Oh, I'm so guilty of this. Oh gosh. Like this is real. This is very much me. And it can be, it's kind of tough. It's tough to read, but it's also beautiful because you're like, like you kind of like get a handle on understanding like why we do the stuff we do. Right. And, he also wrote a book with 50 Cent.
Okay.
And the book he wrote with 50 Cent 50 Cent's really interesting because he a rapper, but also like a very, very successful businessman.
He's a clever guy. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
if you see him being interviewed, he's not. Yeah. He knows what he's talking about.
He's a really interesting character. But he wrote with Robert Greene the 50th Law, right? And 50 Cent's law is like you have to live a life without fear, because fear drives us into being like other people. And when we act like other people, we are not in our own energy. We're not ourselves. And we are, then we become weak.
Well, you just become part of the crowd as well, don't you? You're not going to stand out at all. Yeah.
It's like the only strength that we truly have is the strength of being ourselves, right? And it's so powerful. It's a really neat book because Robert Greene's a wonderful writer, and he ties in all these historical contexts. So he tells the story of 50 Cent's life, right? In the learning of these lessons and how he overcame so many challenges in his life. Going from drug dealer on the street scene to trying to make his way in music and in business, right? And then getting shot. And it being knocked back down and losing everything, and then being like, no, like I've got to conquer this, and I've got to conquer my own fears, and I know if I don't get back on the horse, like I'm done.
Yeah.
And it's such a fantastic book. And
We'll put that in the description. Yeah, we'll put some. What was that? Robert Greene.
Robert Greene, love Robert Greene. Strong suggestion. His books. A lot of his books are very long, right?
Okay.
Like really big books, but they're so distilled value.
Yeah.
Right. Interviews and research and history. And he tells all of these all the rules are related to here's a story about why Napoleon. Okay, here's things that Napoleon did, and this is why this rule makes sense because of the story about Napoleon. And he'll do it 4 or 5 different examples of these every one of his rules, and then he'll go like, okay, this is why it's true here, 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 and because of all those, that's why I call it a law. Right?
Okay.
And he's a very compelling author, and it's very interesting to read. Which there's a lot of books that are dry.
Yeah.
I have to say he's really quite a good author.
But
Really
it's very, is it quite academic, or is it a little bit?
No.
It's not like a textbook. It's more...
No, not at all. No, it's opposite of that. No,
Okay.
he tells stories.
Oh, okay.
So he's saying like, oh, like I think the first law of power, if I remember the order is terrible, like, but it's just like never go above the master, right? So like if someone's teaching you and you outshine your master, right? They're going to be like, well, I'm not going to help you anymore.
Okay.
Because you've kind of like, disabused them of their own help, right?
Yeah.
So like you have to like respect the master, understand the master, learn from them, and like one day, right? It's gonna be like the master's gonna be like, it's your turn now.
Yeah.
Right? And if you can be patient, right? The master's gonna lift you up, right? But if you go like, fuck you, right, to the one who taught you,
Yeah.
then they're going to be like, well, fuck you back. And I'm going to teach you what you thought you knew everything, but you're going to find out you're not.
Any flat earthers watching, that's very good advice there for any of you lot who are watching this.
Oh, like if you're a flat earther, like come and have a chat with me. Like, I
love it. That's another thing I'm obsessed with. But there was one, but I don't really want to get into that too much because I can talk for hours and hours and hours about that. But the
conspiracy theories or about
flat earthing specifically because it's the bottom of the barrel of conspiracy theories. Because this is the point that someone makes online is going. So what they're doing, they're going against all of human. Against the whole human race. So, thousands of years of exploration, experimentation, endeavor, all wrong.
Do you ever like ever think about like the why?
I just
go to that side. Are you more in like the what they say or the actual? Because for me, what the really most interesting thing is why people get themselves into flat earthing.
I think there are two schools of thought there. I think you've got the guys who have got 10,000 plus subscribers on YouTube. They're definitely charlatans.
Oh, sure, yeah.
They're just in it to make the money, and then the other people they actually believe it, and they're just people who are just obsessed with conspiracy theories. See, but you can guarantee that anyone that believes the Earth is flat believes all the others as well. Believes
but that's it, right? So actually, like, that's my point though. Is what I want to say is that when people are into conspiracy theories, it's because they actually are looking to discredit the world, right?
Yeah.
Because they want to remove responsibility from themselves. What they're really looking to do is escape from science, right? Because science holds you responsible.
Yeah.
Right? You have to, like, if for example, like if the world is flat and the world is lying to me, right? That explains why I can't be successful in life. That's not to do with the fact that I'm lazy,
right?
Or that I don't do my homework, or I don't do work hard, or I don't do the things that matter. I don't go to the gym. I don't do these things that everybody tells me I need to do to be happy.
Yeah,
I can just blame my unhappiness on everybody else, and therefore just relieve myself and live in this kind of like,
yeah.
God, I would really feel bad if this was my fault. But since the world is lying to me,
yeah,
I know that it's not my fault. And there's this tied into that like psychology of self-deception.
It's a sense of belonging as well, I think, for these people. To be part of this kind of gang who think that they're right and everyone else is wrong, and it's very, it's like a bit of a clique. It's very arrogant.
But like, what's interesting about that is like, that's the most beautiful aspect of what religion brings, right? Any religion, including flat earthism, right?
Yeah.
Is the group aspect, right? Is that togetherness, the family of being together, and it's so needed. Like, we need a tribe, right?
Yeah.
We are human creatures, right? We're human animals, and we need connection, right? It's like why we come to the pub, right? As well,
yeah.
And it's like as like we have a pub family, like a group of friends that we see all the time. And there's more than one, even just in Toulouse, right? There's more than one, and like you might have friends in multiple like pub families of groups of people that you hang out with.
Yeah.
But like that's it. Like we talked earlier about holidays, my favorite holiday is actually Thanksgiving, because to me, Thanksgiving is not religious.
No, okay, yeah.
And therefore, it is just about getting together with the people you love and having amazing food, right? And
That's for me. That's Christmas as well. Yeah, Christmas religion. It's not nothing to do with
Yeah.
religion for me. Yeah, it's the
Well,
it's the family. It's all about
I
family.
grew up Roman Catholic, so like Christmas has that like religious connotation. Not that Christmas is bad. It's just that like I want that like that otherworldly freedom of like I had a Thanksgiving with my mom and entire family back in the States. I came back to France and I had a bunch of people over. We had a Thanksgiving here, and we had both of them were fantastic.
Oh, I remember your mum coming in here.
Oh,
we
yeah.
met, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Like,
it's just all about that. The getting together, spending time with family. Oh yeah, it's my number one favorite thing to do. Like spend time at home with the family.
well,
Yeah.
I'm getting dry, so.
Oh yeah, we need to.
Are we shall we bring it to a close?
We'll wrap it up there. We'll wrap it up. I'm looking forward to Christmas. I can't wait. I'm going home tomorrow.
Love
Yeah, looking forward. I'm going to meet my new nephew for the first time.
Awesome.
Little Louis.
Congratulations.
He was born September 7th. Hopefully I've got that right. I think I have got that right. Yeah, so looking forward to seeing him. Alan, it's always a fucking pleasure, mate.
Always.
You're an absolute
Always.
legend.
Good times.
And yeah, so we'll see you very, very soon. Like, subscribe, come down to Seven Sisters. Come and meet Alan. Come and meet me if you want to.
Get a big hug.
You get a big Alan hug, yeah. But yeah, we'll see you very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
guys.